Welcome to this explainer. You know the name. You absolutely know the name. But the true story of Nikola Tesla? Well, it's going to completely astound you. We're tracking the tragic, just brilliantly chaotic arc of a visionary whose mind was so far ahead of its time that his inventions literally built the 20th century, yet somehow he was overshadowed, misunderstood, and eventually forgotten by the very industries he helped create. Let's get right into it. Now, there's this really stark, honestly heartbreaking contrast between the modern brand we all know and the actual historical man. Today, you see the name Tesla plastered across the globe on a trillion-dollar corporation trying to revolutionize transport and energy, right? But the historical Nikola Tesla, the guy who actually pioneered the scientific foundations of modern electricity, he didn't see even a fraction of that wealth. No way. He actually died virtually penniless, deeply in debt, and living entirely alone in a hotel room. So how did that happen? Well, the seeds of this incredibly unique mind were planted super early. He was born to Serbian parents on the Austro-Hungarian borderlands in 1856. And, fittingly enough, he was born right in the middle of this massive, terrific thunderstorm. But his childhood had some darkness, too. After the really traumatic death of his older brother, Dane, young Nikola started experiencing these intense, hyper-vivid visual hallucinations. But here's the crazy part. Instead of letting it break him, he reshaped these visions into a powerful tool for contemplation. Oh, and he also found some early inspiration right at home. While petting his black cat Matchok, he noticed a loud spark and a halo of light. His dad explained it was electricity. And that seemingly tiny moment, it ignited an absolute lifelong obsession.
Flash forward a bit to 1882 in Budapest, and we get to see this raw intellectual power in action. So Tesla is working as a draftsman, but his brain is completely consumed with this massive engineering puzzle about electrical currents. He's just strolling through a park with a friend when, out of nowhere, the solution simply flashes into that hyper-vivid imagination of his. He completely visualizes a rotating magnetic field right there in his head. He doesn't even have paper. He just grabs a stick and sketches the groundbreaking blueprints for the induction motor right there in the dirt. I mean, who does that?
To really wrap our heads around his greatest triumph, we have to understand alternating current, or AC. Unlike other systems back then, alternating current periodically reverses its course and direction, changing about 50 to 60 times every single second. Because of this cyclical nature, it can flexibly sustain varying levels of high voltage and practically eliminate power loss over huge distances. Basically, this was his big revolutionary idea for safely sending power across entire continents, rather than just fumbling to power a single city block. And this brilliant breakthrough, it sparked the legendary war of the currents between Tesla and his former boss, Thomas Edison. Edison was relentlessly pushing for direct current, or DC, which only flows in one direction. But DC had a fatal flaw. It was insanely inefficient. It could barely light lamps a few miles away and required these super expensive power stations to be built every 2 miles. Tesla, on the flip side, championed his AC system, proving time and again that it was infinitely superior, way safer, and absolutely perfect for long-distance power transmission. Tesla definitively proved the safety and the sheer awesome power of his designs on the global stage in 1893. He actually outbid Edison's General Electric by a staggering $1 million to win the contract to light up the Chicago World's Columbian Exposition. Using entirely alternating current, Tesla illuminated the massive fairgrounds and just dazzled millions of visitors. It was a spectacular public victory. It proved, absolutely beyond a shadow of a doubt, that alternating current was the future of the world. That Chicago triumph really caught the eye of some heavy-hitting investors, most notably George Westinghouse. Westinghouse believed in Tesla so much that he bought 40 of his trailblazing polyphase patents. By licensing Tesla's designs, Westinghouse saw his company's annual turnover absolutely explode from $800,000 to over $4.2 million. And Tesla, he was finally rewarded for his genius, securing a massive payout of roughly $105,000 in royalties. That was a real game-changer for him. The absolute peak of his scientific triumph hit in 1895. Tesla achieved a literal childhood dream when his designs were used to build the first ever hydroelectric power plant at Niagara Falls. Harnessing the mighty power of those falls to generate widespread alternating current, that was the ultimate crushing defeat of the direct energy school of thought. Tesla was suddenly lavished with international praise. His work was celebrated all over the world as this monumental leap forward for human civilization. But right around here is where his ambitions start growing noticeably more eccentric. In 1899, flush with all this funding, he packed up and moved out to Colorado Springs to chase a wild new dream, a completely wireless world. He built an enormous experimental facility on the outskirts of town, and he legitimately terrified the locals by nailing this ominous quote from Dante's Inferno right to his laboratory door: "Abandon hope, all ye who enter here." Inside, he just started playing with millions of volts of electricity.
Out there in Colorado Springs, his undeniable genius really started morphing into a dangerous obsession. He figured out that the Earth itself had electric potential and could act as a giant conductor. He was generating massive man-made lightning bolts with 30-foot sparks, and incredibly, he actually managed to wirelessly light 200 lamps from 26 miles away. But all that isolation, it led to some pretty wild assertions. He started publicly claiming his receivers were picking up intelligent, rhythmic beeps that he genuinely believed were extraterrestrial signals from Martians. Yeah, Martians!
Completely undeterred by the skeptics, Tesla headed back to New York to fund his ultimate vision, a world telegraphy system. He somehow managed to convince Wall Street titan J.P. Morgan that he could make those crazy expensive transatlantic cables totally obsolete. Morgan agreed to invest $150,000, which was a staggering fortune at the time, in exchange for a 51% stake in Tesla's patents. With that cash in hand, Tesla started building the massive 187-foot-high Wardenclyffe transmission tower. But this grand vision, it quickly spiraled into sheer tragedy. Tesla was desperately racing to finish his wireless tower, but in 1901, rival inventor Guglielmo Marconi actually beat him to the punch, successfully sending the first transatlantic radio signal. Jittery over Marconi's success and all of Tesla's missed deadlines, J.P. Morgan ruthlessly cut Tesla's funding in 1903. Enraged, Tesla fired up his tower to max capacity, hurling actual lightning into the New York sky. But it was over. Without funding, the project stalled out, eventually forcing him to file for bankruptcy in 1916. The reality of his bankruptcy was just incredibly stark. Think about it. The man who quite literally designed the electrical grid of the 20th century, whose patents generated absolute millions for other men, was reduced to a meager monthly income of under $400. He was publicly humiliated, unable to even scrape together enough to pay a minor $935 tax bill to the New York Treasury. And because Morgan still owned the majority of his wireless patents, other investors completely refused to touch him. In his later decades, Tesla really retreated from society, living completely isolated in a string of New York hotels. He developed strange neuroses and this intense obsession with feeding the pigeons in Bryant Park. Yet that brilliant mind never really stopped working. In the 1930s, he gripped the public imagination one last time, claiming he was designing a particle beam weapon, a literal death ray that would shoot tungsten projectiles at 48 times the speed of sound. He genuinely believed this terrifying weapon would create a global nuclear stalemate and permanently end all human warfare. Ultimately, this brilliant, theatrical, and deeply flawed visionary passed away entirely alone in his suite, room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, on January 7, 1943. He was 86 years old. His ashes were eventually placed inside a golden sphere, which you can see today in a museum in Belgrade. But despite his incredibly tragic end, he left behind over 700 patents that fundamentally shaped the industrial and digital world we rely on every single day. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to just look at the screen you are watching right now. It, along with the entire global power grid, is running on the exact alternating current principles that Nikola Tesla visualized in a dirt path over a century ago. Given his absolute foundational contributions to modern civilization, we have to ask a seriously provocative question. Does his undeniable practical impact on humanity make him a more brilliant scientist than even Albert Einstein? Think about that for a second, and keep exploring the incredible truths behind our modern world.